had in the past, before now. But today, the title of our workshop here we're going to be having is the fundamentals of qualitative research design, which is going to be taken by Dr. Otulu Samuel Avemaria. Is an assistant professor from the Department of Information Systems, American University of Nigeria, Yola. And while we're about to start, I would like to recognize the presence of Dr. Yusuf Sulaiman. Is the Director, Center for Research, Industrial Linkage and International Cooperation at Ikimo University. It will be the one to read the citations on Dr. Otulu. So, Dr. Yusuf Sulaiman, I hope you're in the house. You're welcome, please.
Thank you, sir, for that wonderful intro. And I want to welcome members of this session. And I strongly believe that by the end of the session, we will be able to have something meaningful that we can take on. Research. However, let me begin by reading the dissertation of Dr. Avemaria Atulu. Dr. Samuel C. Avemaria Atulu is currently an assistant professor at the Department of Information Systems, School of Information Technology and Computing, American University of Nigeria. Dr. Atulu backed the Bachelor in Library and Computer Science degree from the
The speaker is muted, please. Can he unmute himself?
Sorry, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Please, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for that observation, madam. Dr. Otulu was appointed as an assistant professor at the American University of Nigeria in the year 2020, and currently has about 40 publications in journals, currently for these students and chapters in books of readings. He has won the University of Cape Town 2014 Research Associate Award as a PhD student. He is also a co-author of the paper that won the Ned Doherty Best Paper Prize Award in 2022, United Kingdom Academy for Information Systems Conference. He has served as a resource person in several local and international workshops, and as a speaker in public lectures in some Nigerian universities, including the University of Ibadan, College of Medicine, University of Lagos, and Lagos State University. And Dr. Otulu was once a former lecturer and speaker at the prestigious Redeemers University in Nigeria. Currently, Dr. Otulu is husband to wife and father to 2 sons. He is a die-hard Super Eagles and Chelsea fan. I hereby welcome Dr. Tulu to give us his thoughts on fundamentals of quality research design. Thank you.
So Dr. Tulu, you have the floor, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction. Once again, I want to apologize for coming in late, the meeting, and I hope that at the end of it all, we'll be able to, gain one or two things from qualitative research design that I hope to present in the next, say, 40, 45 minutes. So having said that, I also will want to hold on to already laid down protocols because of the time eating up, given the fact that I came in late. Now, the title of my presentation is Fundamentals of Qualitative Research, and Fundamentals of Qualitative Research. So I'll be dealing with a specific aspect of these fundamentals of qualitative research. When we talk about qualitative research, I hope you can see my screen. I hope you can see my screen. I'm sharing my screen already. When we talk about qualitative research, it's a big deal. It's actually some kind of a big deal. And it takes a lot of effort for one to be able to complete qualitative research. And most people who are not familiar with the qualitative research design will probably feel that qualitative research is all about telling stories. So by the time we finish today, we hope that we would have spoken about what is so unique about qualitative research. Now, first and foremost, on my screen, I have types of research design. Basically, it is more, it could be more. We have 3 types of research design, depending on how the person talking defines what a research design is. If you go through the literature, you see different definitions about on research design. But for the sake of this lecture, the 3 types of research design that we have mainly is the quantitative research design, the qualitative research design, and the mixed method research design. Now, the qualitative research design is actually the most popular of all the types of research design because of the history of science. History of science began in the natural sciences, and they actually use more of the quantitative, not qualitative, quantitative research design in the natural sciences. So triggered and filtered into the social sciences, where I belong to, and I'm sure some of my listeners are also in the social sciences here. So the quantitative research design is by far the most popular of the 3 types of research design listed here. Now, qualitative research design is growing in popularity. In the recent time, people are beginning to see the importance, the importance of qualitative research design, and they are, buying into qualitative research design, specifically in all fields, medical sciences, social sciences, and even in the natural sciences. We see people who actually do research design. Now, the third type, the mixed method research design, is affected by the popularity of the qualitative research design, because the mixed method is actually a research method that brings together qualitative research design and quantitative research design. So the mixed method is not so popular. The popularity is growing anyway, but it's not as popular as the quantitative research design. But as we all know, today we've that again. Qualitative research design provide grants for validating, a scientific research that makes inferences from qualitative data. For me, I will believe that this learned audience will understand what I mean by making inference from qualitative data. Then I will understand. I will believe that the audience also understand what I mean by documentation of research through rigor and reliability. Where rigor has to do with following in details and corrections adequately required methodological stances for every the owner of Techno Power 2, please unmute yourself. Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for that. So I would believe that this highly learned audience will understand what I mean by validating scientific research through rigor and reliability. Where rigor has to do with adequate and appropriate use of research methodology, and reliability has to do with adequate and appropriate documentation leads to the replicability of research. The fact that you have conducted a research, another researcher should be able, all things being equal, to conduct that type of research using the same type of methodology. That's what I mean here. But the major thing here is that qualitative research design provides the ground for validating a scientific research that makes inferences from qualitative design. From qualitative data. Now, what are the sources of qualitative data that you can use when you are doing qualitative, when you adopt the qualitative research design? First and foremost, you have the observation. Sources of qualitative data for qualitative research. First, we have observation. And here I have noted that observation could be two: simple observation or traditional observation, and participatory observation. Observation could be participatory in that the researcher, the qualitative researcher, is participating in the everyday life of the people that he studied. Now, the second source of qualitative data is interviews. Interviews, all of us know, has to do with a researcher asking research participants some questions about the subject of its research. This could be also some traditional interview or in-depth interview. And of course, in most qualitative research or research studies that adopt the qualitative research design, most times the interview type is in-depth interview. The third source of qualitative data is non-verbal cues. Here, non-verbal cues have to do with gestures. When you watch people, for instance, using participatory observation, or you watching people, or you interviewing people, you also document gestures, non-verbal cues, gestures, their reactions to questions. You try to document that too. So very, very crucial source of qualitative data. Now, also the last one on my list here is the qualitative, the document sources. Qualitative data can also be, retrieved for research document sources. So we have highlighted, underscored the sources of qualitative data that a qualitative researcher is likely to adopt. In most qualitative research, you adopt everything. You use participatory observation, you use interviews, you use you document cues, that's gestures of research participants, and of course you use documents. Later on, we're going to be talking about, we're going to probably talk about the triangulation of all of those. Now, the question is, how do we go about that discussion today, which is very crucial, having understood or having present to us what qualitative research design is all about. So the question is, how do we go about that discussion so that we can have yeah, like I just unmuted myself. I'm sorry, I got lost along the line. So I will ask that I be made to be able to share my screen so that I could share my slide once more. So like I was saying before I got offline, it's like most research reports are made of 5 chapters: introduction, literature review, which your literature review may contain the conceptual framework and theoretical framework. Then the third chapter, the research methodology. Now the fourth, the findings, and of course, the summary and conclusion of your research work. Now again, I'm still asking the host, please allow me to share my screen so everybody could see my slide. Please allow me to share my screen. I'm still waiting to share my screen. So everybody will know, will understand that these are the 5 chapters that are likely to be in a research report, say a master's thesis or PhD thesis. But there are exceptions. For instance, my PhD thesis has 7 chapters. So, but then whatever breakages we have are really along this line. So, but then the question here is, how do we go about our discussion today? Our discussion today is going to be focused on the research methodology. So we're going to bypass the introduction, we're going to bypass the literature review, and of course, what happens in your findings and summary. For instance, while I was being introduced, at the beginning of when I logged in, I realized that there have been people who presented on how to do qualitative research, and I'm sure they probably must have presented their presentation that covers some of this. But my presentation today will be based on the research methodology, and that is important because of the title. I said fundamentals of qualitative research design. And mind you, research design is actually the primary part of research methodology. I hope I can share my screen now. I cannot share my screen.
You can share your screen, please. You can share your screen, sir. You're among the co-hosts.
Yeah, like what I'm being told, the host disabled participant sharing of screen. So like I'm clicking on sharing and it's still saying host disabled participant screen sharing. So I don't know how that can be dealt with. I'm trying to share, but I can't share. It's saying host disabled participant screen sharing. So having said that, when we talk about we're looking at research design. Research design actually had to do, depending again on who is talking. Research design had to do with either you chose the qualitative research, the quantitative research, or the mixed method. There are different ways in the literature that they have come to define what research design is. But this is the way I define my research design. Like it is that part of
You
the
can now
literature.
project your.
Yeah, I can project now. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. Now, okay. Depending on who is talking, research design will have to tell us if you are using qualitative or quantitative method. So I'm not going to discuss that. So here we talk about research approach. Like most of the time, I will expect that of course, I'm going to share this slide. Now, research approach, the first thing in research, the second in the line of assessment of research methodology, practically in the social sciences, is looking at the logic of reasoning. That's the research approach. Now, the research approach, there are 4 types of research approach. You could use the inductive research approach, you could use the deductive, you could use the reproductive, you could use the adaptive. Now, the adaptive is very, very germane to doing some kind of qualitative research. Why this will be a focus on another day. This is a full lecture, like talking about the adaptive. But then most times, researchers in Nigeria, and of course in most part of the developing countries, we adopt the deductive reasoning. The deductive reasoning is actually coming from specific to general. Here we use theory, existing formal theories, while the inductive reasoning is actually coming from the general to specific. Inductive reasoning does not allow or do not permit or do not necessitate that the researcher start his research using a theory. And in inductive reasoning, if you are familiar with grounded theory, which later we will talk about in the course of this lecture, grounded theory research method is actually a primary type of research method that adopts inductive reasoning, where you develop theory from data. So that's that about this. So you could research this privately. Now, the second line of, the top line of research methodology assessment is the research philosophy, where we talk about positivism, interpretivism, realism, and pragmatism. In Nigeria, most part of developing countries, and of course, in most part of the world anyway, the positivism philosophy is actually the one most social science researchers and other categories of researchers use. The positivism actually makes us to believe that reality is objective. Now, the reality is objective. So objective reality, it's based on objectivism. So it's based on objectivism. The second research philosophy here is the interpretivism. Interpretivism is subjectivism. Now, interpretivism, as one will look, if you understand interpretivism, most, like 99.9% of research based on interpretivism are qualitative research. So in doing qualitative research, the interpretivism philosophy is actually what most researchers would like to adopt because it is subjective. Later, when we begin to talk about research methods and the subjectivity and objectivism, you will see the reason why they adopt the interpretivism philosophy or the interpretivist philosophy. The third one here is the realism. Realism actually believes in both objectivism and subjectivism. That's the research philosophy. The realism research philosophy will make the researcher pay attention to his research processes as being both objective and subjective. Why pragmatism doesn't care. Pragmatism doesn't care whether objectivism or subjectivism is in question. All pragmatism cares about is adequate and appropriate answering of research questions. And in computer science and in most technology-based discipline where they develop artifacts, pragmatism is actually the philosophy they use. Again, I will say that talking about research philosophy and qualitative research design is another realm that will take another seminar or lecture like this. So I have to bypass that. Now, another research method level of assessing research methodology is the research method. Now, when we look at research method, when a researcher adopts the qualitative research design, is most likely going to adopt the qualitative case study or ethnography, or, as I said earlier, grounded theory or action research. Now, research method in qualitative research design, if you adopt the qualitative research design, your research method pay attention to phenomenology and hermeneutics. Phenomenology is an aspect of philosophy that talks about people's experience. It talks about everyday life experience of people. Now, hermeneutics is also an aspect of philosophy that talks about dialogue as means of developing knowledge. Dialogue as means for developing knowledge. In other words, knowledge is socially constructed in dialogue. People dialogue to construct knowledge. So research method adopted in qualitative research pays attention to the philosophy entrenched in phenomenology and hermeneutics. In other words, it pays attention to people's everyday life experiences and how within the everyday life experiences, they are able to make meaning of their experiences. That's like the dialogue through which they reach what they agree to be meaningful or to be the best description of their social reality or social experiences. So qualitative case study is one form of research method. Here, I use research method to describe all these methods instead of methodology. Again, when you go into the literature, you see that some people will call case study methodology, ethnography methodology. I believe that methodology is the science of method. And under methodology, what all of the stuff I've been explaining, research design, research approach, research philosophy, and research method. So that's the reason why I'm using the word method, which could be confusing because some authors may have used method and methodology interchangeably. So you look at ethnography, grounded theory, and action research. Later on in the course of my discussion, we will come to discuss these different types of qualitative research methods. Now, when we talk in qualitative research method, again, we talk about the sampling, the research sampling technique. Now, again, here we look at the objective and subjective, objectivism and subjectivism. Now, the sampling technique in qualitative research design is actually subjective. It's subjective in that you could choose your research participant or research contest based on convenient factors. There is also the purposive sampling technique and the snowball sampling technique. All of these sampling techniques are all subjective. Now, if you just oppose them, for instance, with ethnography, ethnography is actually the kind of methodology that is mainly developed in the field of anthropology. People studying culture and social realities is divided into ethno and graphy, which means the photograph of culture within an ethnic group. Now, all of this, for instance, the ethnography, it's usually based on snowball, because on snowball, where the sample, the first sample you sample will lead you to the next sample and so on and so forth. These are subjective sampling techniques. They are very subjective. Now, for us, as a way of understanding the qualitative research design, the qualitative research design is highly subjective. And that is the reason why we talk again of the qualitative case study. For instance, my thesis, my PhD thesis at the University of Cape Town is based on qualitative case study. And most times in the Nigerian university setup, where I was trained, I had my degree and my master's, well-trained, due respect. I was a well-trained Nigerian scholar. So what I'm trying to say, in Nigerian universities at the PhD level, candidates may not be allowed to use case study. Because case study, they believe you will not be able to generalize your result. And sometimes it's too small. Yeah, it's too small to make generalization. But for qualitative research, if you adopt the qualitative research design, like I did in my thesis, I was able to adopt the qualitative case study and of course the ethnography research method. Like I had 2 research methods in my thesis. And all of these, the convenience, the purposive, the snowball, are the research sampling technique that I use. Now, if we move from there to data analysis, for instance, if you go back here, we have spoken, okay, if we go back to, I'm trying to look for something here, okay. Okay, now I understand where I'm going to. If you go back to the sources of qualitative data, which actually in this context will mean technique of data collection. The sources we mentioned earlier, we said observation, we said interviews, then we said non-verbal cues and document sources. If you go back to these sources, then you will collect qualitative data. Once you collect qualitative data, which are actually in string forms, in word forms, because they are interviews, they are stories. They call them sometimes in let me say in a layman's word, you could call them stories about people with social experiences. You might feel the information systems is socio-technical. We try to talk about stories about people's experiences with technology. So once you have your data, you have collected your data through interviews, through participatory observation, through documentation of non-verbal cues and documents. There are 2 basic ways in which one can analyze qualitative data. And first and foremost is the thematic analysis. Thematic analysis has to do with reading through your data and trying to group them into themes. Now, if you have, for instance, if you have adopted a theory in your research, which most researchers would do because you adopted the deductive reasoning. So the theory, the variables in the theory becomes the basis for your themes. For instance, if you are familiar with, say, information system success model or success theory, you will know that it contains about 7 variables that has to do with quality of data, systems quality, data quality, information quality, and variable. So in thematic analysis of your data, you group your interview, your data that has been transcribed already, you group them into different themes, that may be determined, mostly determined by the theory that you used for your study. In my study, I used the inductive reasoning. So my thematic data analysis was called the in vivo thematic analysis. In vivo, in that I generated the themes without theoretical input. I generated the themes like related stories, related submissions that I was able to gather from interviews and participatory observation. I grouped them into themes and later took the theme to interpret theories that are available that are related to that. Now, the second data analysis technique is the content analysis. The content analysis is actually more statistical, so to say, like I put that in quotes, where you try to find out the occurrences of some concepts. You try to look at the occurrences of some context. You try to group them in the by order of occurrence. For instance, let's say systems quality in information systems model or information systems success model or information system success theory. You will group, for instance, you identified the concept system success or systems quality, rather, systems quality. And now you want to count the number of times it appears. And you use that counting to determine what your data is saying about systems quality. Whether your data is actually saying that systems quality is come to play in the way the people you studied actually see the success of the information technology or information systems they use. Now I'll quickly move to the next question that we usually ask when it comes to research, qualitative research design. The next question is actually the validity and the reliability. The reason why qualitative research design is not popular is because most scientists, particularly those who are vast in qualitative research, will say that you cannot validate your claims because they are strings of words, and in a way they could say they are stories, and anybody could put those strings of words together, you know. So that's some of the reasons. But the validity of a research, of a qualitative research, it's based on three grounds. You have the sample validity, you have the data validity, and of course you have the research process validity. How do you justify? Now, again, I need to say this. In quantitative research, there are statistical matrices or statistical approaches that they use to justify validity of data, validity of the research. In qualitative research, there is nothing like using statistical measures to determine validity. The measure of validity will be seen in sample validity. What are you studying? And what samples did you choose? Either based on convenience or the other types of highly subjective sampling technique? How did you choose those that provided the data? Is the question. So fine. The first thing that you look at in your sample validity is actually the alignment between the people you sampled and the subject you are dealing with. For instance, I'll give you an example. If I want to study the student behavior, if I want to study the student behavior, the person, there's somebody whose baby is crying. You mute your, okay, there's somebody whose baby is crying, and you mute your system. Thank you for that. Thank you. Thank you for that. Now, when you're talking about sample validity, is how, to what extent is the sample, the people that participated in the research, to what extent are they related to the question you are dealing with? For instance, I used to give this example. If you want to study, for instance, the behavior of fishes, you want to, the eating behavior of fishes, you want to see what they do when they are eating, because they eat food. So how do you go about that? The unit of your study is actually the fishes. How do you go about that? Which has some kind of methodological implication. You probably will go and ask a fisherman, or you want to ask a pond owner, the guy that owns a pond, to say what are the characteristics of the feeding behavior of so the pond owner of the fisherman tells you about how fishes are feed. The validity, like you're studying the fishes in proxy, that validity, that sample validity is questionable, because the data the fisherman or the pond owner will provide with respect to the feeding behavior of fishes is likely not to be accurate. Another way is for you, for instance, to say, okay, I will go into the pond and start looking for fishes to understand how they feed. Again, that's That has some methodological implication. To what extent can that move you? To what extent can that move you so close to the sample and the subject of your study? The sample is the fish, and the subject of your study is the fish eating behavior. To what extent is that going to move you close to them? So sample validity is also questionable there. Now you can decide to use marine camera, put marine camera in a pond and pour food there, and use the camera to observe the fishes directly. Then you take the video and go study fishing behavior. That's like sample validity. In that third instance, the sample validity it's higher than the two other instances that I gave. Now, the second validity test, like here we are, the sample validity is based on research process, which is actually had to do with reliability. We will get to that and discuss that in a jiffy as I move on with the lecture. Now, the second validity test is the data validity. The data validity. So how do you ensure that your data is valid in a research that is highly subjective? How do you ensure that your data is valid in a research design that is highly subjective? Then the research that is highly subjective and is mainly based on case study research method, the case study philosophy. All of the research method that I put down earlier that was displayed on screen it's driven by the case study research methodology philosophy. For instance, ethnography. You cannot do some kind of ethnography, real ethnography, studying multiple societies in depth. You can't do that. Mainly ethnographers will study a single society. Now, and it's highly subjective. For instance, convenience sampling, using convenience sampling and using, say, purposive sampling and the other type of highly subjective sampling. So when we look at how do you ensure data validity becomes the question. Now, the data validity comes from the heterogeneity of your sample first. What does that supposed to mean? You have to sample every relevant group in your study. I will use my thesis, for instance. I did my thesis I was studying factors that determine the adoption. So this audience will know that it's one of the open access approaches to disseminating scientific research findings. Most of the studies that were done before my study studied librarians, only librarians. Now, and that for me and for qualitative researchers has some question regarding the validity of the data you get. But what I did, because of data validity, was to study every stakeholder connected to institutional repositories within the university context: librarians, lecturers, administrators, IT workers, university management. So what I did was to collect data from these multiple groups. So in determining your data validity, you have to question the heterogeneity of your sample. To what extent did you incorporate every stakeholder that is important to you understanding and getting valid data on the subject you are dealing with? On the subject you are dealing with. What are the factors, for instance, that determine the adoption of institutional repository? Everybody will know that the IT department will have a say. The management will have a say. The lecturers within the university will have a say. The same thing with the admin staff, who actually could be students or admin staff dealing with some administrative issues that had to do with institutional repository. So data validity had to do with the heterogeneity of the sample of the people that of the participants in the research. To what extent were you able to identify key stakeholders and interview them, observe them using participatory observation, document their cues, that's their gestures and collect documents that has to do with the everyday life reality with regards to what you are dealing with in your study. Now, the third one here is the research process validity. The research process validity is actually one of the unique ways of reporting a qualitative research design, scientific research, a research design that adopted a qualitative research design. That's the research process validity. The research process validity is actually you documenting, understanding every bit of what you did, beginning from the beginning of the research. For instance, a research will begin, so to say, from observation. You will observe some social reality. This is in the social sciences that I belong to. You will observe some social reality and probably now start reading about that social reality. For instance, the experiences we've had in the past 3 months or thereabouts in Nigeria of scarcity of cash is a very good research area for qualitative research. You have experienced that. The next question is to look into the literature to say, okay, who studied this, something related to this? Have anybody studied and published this? How, and questions like that. So research process validity had to do with documenting the research process from the beginning. Why you observed, how you observed, what you did after observation. Maybe you went to read the literature, if you are adopting the deductive reasoning, or you went to read some theories, so you could understand the theories you used to, to study the phenomena. And of course, how you were able to gain access to the research participants. Ethical issues, how were you able to solve that? How did you handle that? So the research process is actually some long and comprehensive documentation of what you did from day one when your research started. Now, if you have access to my thesis, you will see the long line of research process that I have there to actually justify the validity of my study. Now, the second level of validity is actually the reliability, where reliability has to do with the replicability of the research. Here, this is actually very close to what I have discussed now, the research process validity. The research process is actually what you did from the very beginning of the observation till the end of your research, of writing up your research. So that the reliability, and that makes it possible for another researcher, everything being equal, to be able to conduct similar research, everything being equal. Because one of the requirements of science is openness, what you did. So you did something and you report them, so other people are able to do the same thing for validity's sake. Now, one thing that is very important for us to know is that the reliability in qualitative research design is very complex because it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time. For instance, if you are doing ethnography, participatory observation, you have to document every day what you did. It takes a whole lot of time. And that's the reason why reliability and validity claims in qualitative research, it's easy. It's easy to identify and validate. For those of us who actually assesses papers, qualitative papers, and of course qualitative thesis, the reliability, the process, the reliability is actually one important aspect of qualitative research that the researcher needs to learn how to deal with in order for him or her to justify that his research is scientific. Now, let's look at the next one is ethical requirements. Now, as a researcher domiciled in Nigeria, I've had situations in which, for those quantitative researchers, PhD masters, you print your your questionnaire, you send it to your friend in other universities. They can actually help you to distribute your questionnaire to participants or study the people you want to study, and they fill the packages and send it back to you by mail. Now, for qualitative research, it's not possible for somebody to help you collect your data in proxy like that. Most times, qualitative researchers are saddled with the responsibility to go meet the people that sampled and collect data from them. Now, this has ethical implications. For instance, when you are doing ethnographic research, I could be studying, for instance, ethnographic research of family structure in, say, in Yola. So all that means is like, I'm going to participate in the life of the family that agrees with me to study them. I will live with them. I will go to them at the right time when they are performing some family responsibilities, probably in the morning when they pray, in the morning when they eat, what their behavior when they try to go to school and work, and vice versa. So all of this has ethical requirements. So the ethical requirements of qualitative research design studies is very, very important. The ethical requirements are very important because qualitative research studies require some kind of observation and participation. Now, it's not compulsory that you do participatory observation anyway, but then observation. You could observe people in their offices. You could observe people in their homes. You could observe people in the street. You know, you could observe people in so many places. So you cannot observe people covertly. Covert observation is when they don't know that you're observing them. I think many research designs, qualitative research design, will not permit a researcher to observe people covertly. That is, those people don't know that you are observing them. They have to know. You have to tell them what you are doing. You have to, you have to tell them the risk of what they are doing, of what you are doing. What risk are they likely going to face in the future or during the course of your study? So the participation, ethical requirements of participation, you have to spell out to your institution, one, and to the people who are studying, and of course, to the general scientific community, that you got the permission of those people that participated in your study. And of course, you also have to take into consideration privacy issue, observing people, interviewing people. You know, an in-depth interview can lead you to talk about private issues. For instance, I am conducting a study on casual sexual relationships. Casual sexual relationships have to do with people's casual sexual relationship and is deeply private. So privacy issue comes to bear because it's a qualitative research design. I have to talk to the people, I have to ask them questions. Again, in IT-related studies, you could be studying people and observing them when they are logging into their systems, when they are doing some private stuff. You could attend people's meetings, which is private. So you have to spell out privacy issues. How do you want to manage the privacy issues that are attached to the kind of study you are doing? It's a very, very important aspect of qualitative research design. All of this must be spelled out. And most people will have their qualitative research design studies rejected by top-class journals because of ethical requirements. Once they see that you didn't do much about meeting ethical requirements, they reject your paper. Now, the second one is data ownership and usage. Who owns the data and how do you want to use the data? Remember, for instance, when you are a PhD student or a researcher like ourselves who are teaching in universities and also conducting research, if you are a PhD, if you are a researcher, a PhD student, you belong to some institutions. So who owns the data? Is it the research participant that you collected the data from, or you as a researcher, or the institution that you are affiliated to? Again, there is also the question of the journal where you will actually want to publish your research. The journal can actually sometimes may request for you to submit the original data of that for them to check the validity claims directly. Now, who owns the data? That's a question. And how do you settle this with your research participants? And I need to clear this. I'm using the word research participant. In most qualitative research, you don't have research respondents. You don't have respondents. You have participants. There's a difference between research respondents and research participants. So how do you disclose and get the permission of your research participants in terms of data ownership and, of course, data usage? How will you use the data is a question. And how do you present the data? Most times we present data without participants' names. I could remember when I submitted my thesis for external evaluation. One of the questions raised by the external evaluator, one of them is like, I have the website of one of the universities I studied in my thesis, and that leads anybody to that university. And my agreement with those universities is that I'm not going to disclose that I studied them. So in my thesis, in the research papers that I published from my thesis, you may not know the 3 Nigerian universities I studied. So this external reviewer, given the ethical requirement, questioned me unknowingly. I didn't know that. I didn't know it. I was fresh using qualitative research. So I put the websites there. And as a matter of fact, that discloses their identity. So before my final, before putting together my final thesis, I had to expunge that, remove that. So that has to do with disclosure of the identity of your research participant. Now, the next one is the research report, which of course I have discussed here, the research report. How do you report your research without putting into risk the people that participated in your study? And of course, your institution, yourself, and some other stakeholders. So you have to learn. And ethical requirement is like reporting your research in the most ethically, morally, and legally acceptable way. I will repeat that. Reporting your research in the most ethically, legally, and morally acceptable way. So it's very, very important to qualitative research. Very, very important to qualitative research. Now I'm getting to the end of this discussion. I'm really getting to the end of this discussion. I hope people are not tired of listening to me. So the next thing I'm going to talk is that the generalizability and outcomes of qualitative research. You know, how do you, most times the quantitative researchers seek generalization. That's why, for instance, you study in Nigerian universities, you have to know the number, you think, say, Southwest, Northeast, North Central, the number of universities there, then you choose proportionately, or you choose in a way that is statistically acceptable. That's what they do in quantitative research. In qualitative research, which is driven mainly by philosophies underpinning case study research method, the research studies are not generalizable because you are studying in depth a very, very small percentage of the population you are studying. For instance, in my PhD thesis, I studied just 3 Nigerian universities. And these 3 Nigerian universities are within the western part of Nigeria. And if you look at the number of universities, by the time I was completing my PhD, completing my data collection around 2014, 2015, you will realize that we have got a lot. So because it's a case study research, I chose 3 and studied them in depth. My research results cannot be generalized as situation in Southwest Nigeria. It can also not be generalized as situation in Nigeria. So you can't generalize. So, but what kind of generalization do we do in qualitative research design. The kind of generalization we do in qualitative research design is theoretical generalization. What does this supposed to mean? You will compare your findings with findings of existing studies. Findings of existing studies. Why is it that we do theoretical generalization? I've explained. So in doing theoretical generalization, you try to corroborate your findings. In other words, you try to find out your findings if they are related to findings in the literature. So that's what we call theoretical generalization, corroboration. Again, you try to raise questions about existing findings in the literature, existing findings in the literature. For instance, in my PhD thesis, I corroborated some findings done in the past on factors that determine the adoption of institutional repositories in Nigerian universities, and of course, in other universities across the globe, because it's theoretical generalization. What's the findings across the globe? That's the advantage of the qualitative research, irrespective of the fact that it's case study based. You can do theoretical generalization that puts into cognizance the whole body of literature in that field globally. So you could, everywhere, whatever thing that was published on institutional repositories, I was able to corroborate. And again, I was also able to raise questions about the completeness of existing studies and findings in them. So I questioned them. Now, in my study, one of the things I realized was the fact that what we call institutional theory and globalizational theory comes to play in the acceptance and adoption of institutional repository in the universities that I studied. In the whole body of literature across the globe of studies covering institutional repository, except if I didn't know, nobody ever linked institutional repository to institutional theory and globalizational theory the way I did. So, except if I don't know, I stand to be corrected. Maybe somebody saw something I didn't see. So you raise questions about existing studies, the findings in existing studies. And again, you raise proposition on existing studies, propositions. Now, we don't use hypotheses in qualitative research. We use propositions. So your findings, you raise propositions about existing studies. And from those propositions, you make recommendations for future studies. You make recommendations for future studies. Now, before I run off here, I used to give in my class, PhD class and master's class, I used to ask them a very simple question about if there is a theory that says that all the cows in Yola, all of them are black in color. The question is, how many cows that are not black do you need to see to devalidate that theory? I will say it again. I used to say this in class when I'm trying to tell them the importance of case study research and qualitative case study. I would say if you have a theory in Yola that all the cows in Yola are blacks, I mean black cows in Yola. So how many cows that are not black do you need to see before you refute or devalidate that theory? Simple. Once you see one white cow or once you see one red cow, the theory that all cows in Yola becomes invalid. In other words, case study research method, by doing theoretical generalization, that's qualitative case study, by doing theoretical generalization can help refute theories, particularly what we call the large theories. I can't remember the term we use for large theories that are not context specific. You know, it helps you to refute them. Those of us who remember secondary school economics, when we talk about demand and types of demand, we talk of ostentatious good and some special kind of demand, and those were actually gotten from qualitative research. The clamor for context-specific and context-relevant theories, for instance, building theories that are relevant to the African context, to the Nigerian context, is likely, highly likely to be achieved when we do context-specific theories, studies like qualitative case studies and co. This is not to mean that we are I'm playing the quality and the usefulness of quantitative research. That's not what I'm doing here. What I'm doing here is like qualitative research has not been so popular, and if we can popularize it, it's going to help us in our struggles, in our work towards developing particularly social science theories that are context specific. Having said this, I hope that I was able to hit the nail on the head, exactly what you guys expected from me to talk about. I hope I was able to address what you guys expected from me. And I will also say before I round off that my submission here is based on choosing research methodology and operationalizing the required levels of research methodology when you are doing qualitative research. So I want to thank you for listening. And once again, thank you for having me to present this lecture.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tulu. I commend you on your outstanding presentation today. The presentation was very, very informative, engaging, and thought-provoking. And it was clear that you put a lot of effort in crafting. You have demonstrated a deep understanding of the subject matter, and your passion for the topic shone through in your delivery. I also understand that your ability to articulate complex ideas in a clear and a concise manner was very, very impressive. And I appreciate the practical examples and the real-world explanation you have provided. Your presentation style was also excellent. You are confident, articulate, and engaging throughout. And you very well engaged and focused throughout the entire presentation. So therefore, we really appreciate your presentation. Now, few people has actually submitted few questions based on few questions based on your presentation. And I don't know, before I would go into deeply on the questions, I want to quickly ask Dr. Yusuf Sulaiman to give a very fast recap of what our presenter has delivered today. So Dr. Yusuf Sulaiman, can you give a recap of what our presenter has given?
Thank you, Dr. Atulu, for that wonderful presentation. Let me join Dr. Ajani in commending you for a wonderful presentation. Hope that our participants will be able to benefit one or two things from it. Of course, we cannot get the whole content today. Of course, if we can get one aspect of the whole content, of course, it will be a plus for us. Of course, we have several new entrants, new participants that have joined this platform. And of course, I'm sure that going through this workshop, we enable them to be exposed to the nitty-gritty of the qualitative research. However, in order to do a kind of a recap of what Dr. Lu has said, of course, he has given us the three methods of conducting research, which is we have qualitative research, we have quantitative research, and of course, we have a mixed method research. And of course, we all know that most people are familiar or conversant with what we call quantitative research, and that's It's the reason why we are having this workshop, so that people can also be exposed to other part of research, which qualitative research. And of course, we have been exposed to the methodology of qualitative research. And of course, we were told that the research design that can be used for the qualitative research, the sample and sampling techniques, the validity and liability or trustworthiness, and the credibility of the instrument that we normally do. And of course, the techniques of data collection and the techniques of data analysis that we normally do in qualitative research, we have been exposed to that. Also, we've been exposed to what we call the ethical consideration in research, in qualitative research. And of course, the do's and don'ts in qualitative research, we have been exposed to that. And I believe that this discussion will serve as a template that can be used for our participants to carry out their own research where they are working. I believe that this workshop is a good one, and I commend Dr. Atulu for that wonderful presentation. Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Atulu, I would like to present these questions to you. Some of our members have been dropping their question little by little. But before we go into that, if we have anyone that wants to ask a question in the house, should you please raise your hand so that we can recognize you? And before that, while we are waiting people to raise their hand, someone asked a question. He said, his name is Sulaiman Kabir from University of Ilorin. He said, I want the presenter who are his population to use three universities with qualitative approach. I want the presenter who are his population to use three university with qualitative approach. I don't really understand that. If you can understand the submission, Dr. you should improvise around that.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I want to thank the asker of the question for asking that question. Now, I don't really understand the question, but probably is trying to ask questions around population. Who are the population of my study? And I mean, what is the population of my study? And who are, okay, what is the population of my study and how do I justify choosing just three universities?
Exactly.
Yeah, I should think that's what the person is asking. But the truth here is for qualitative research studies, like I said, they mainly use the case study research method. And the case study research method, it is a very small fraction of the population. Now, why you don't even get to talk about the population so much when you are doing case study, qualitative case study. All you are focusing is actually the subject, the problem you are addressing, and of course, the people, the sample you have chosen, to address the question. So in terms of the validity of my sample, the validity of the sample is not in terms of statistics, the adequacy of the number of university I chose, but the appropriateness of the university. First, how did I measure appropriateness? Do they have institutional repository? Are they having a program around institutional repository and stuff like that? Once I answer those questions in the affirmative, yes, 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 then I just chose three, collected in-depth qualitative data, and did what I explained earlier, theoretical generalization, and I came up with something. So that's that. I hope this answers the question that the person tried to ask.
Yes, thank you very much. We are yet to receive another person that's raising their hands, but while we are waiting that, it is very, very important that we actually participate in this, and I would want Dr. Razak Adisa to also reflect on that submission. But while Dr. Adisa is warming up to come in, the person of Dr. Kennedy Nwagu is raising his hand. So Dr. Kennedy, you have been unmuted. So should you please, can you please ask your questions?
Oh.
Dr. Kennedy, we are listening. Dr. Kennedy?
Hello, hello.
Hello? We are with you. Unmute yourself. Yes.
Hello, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. My question is simple. A case study should, if I understand it rightly, should connote a unit of study, a particular organization or industry or whatever, or a society. Now, if the presenter used 3 universities, can we refer that as a case study approach?
Yeah, it is a case study approach. It is a case study approach. Because when you look at, for instance, like I said earlier, how many universities do we have in the southwestern part of Nigeria where my study was situated? You know, we've got a whole lot of public, federal, public, state, public federal, public, state. Then we've got private universities. If we have about 50 universities in a location and you studied 3 of them, I think that makes it a case study. You could claim that you did case study because first and foremost, you can't generalize your study, and by choosing 3, you can't validate. You can't validate your choice of 3 universities out of 50 if it's not case study. So that's the reason why it's case study. It's a case study research.
So thank you very much. Nankia, you may ask your question now.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm sorry, my network kept acting up. It's possible the presenter had already spoken about that, but maybe I missed it. I would love the presenter to speak about, shed more light about research philosophies and what research design is ideal for. Take, for example, positivism. What research design is ideal for that? Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, like, thank you for the question. You know, like, one of the things I tried to do when I was presenting is actually to have a very condensed presentation. Like, I actually said by the time I was addressing research philosophy, that research philosophy and qualitative research it's a full workshop on its own. Now, we've got the positivism, we've got interpretivism, we've got realism, and we've got pragmatism. Now, for positivists, you know, our positivism is actually more aligned to quantitative research. Now, there is, if you go through the literature, you will find out a lot has been written about quantitative case study. There are also studies that are quantitative, that use quantitative case studies, and they are based on what's now on positivism. Now, those quantitative case study, they do not align with subjectivism. They don't align with subjectivism. You know, they really don't align with subjectivism. I will use my thesis again, for example. If I was doing qualitative case study and I wanted to choose 3 universities out of, say, about 30 or 50, I have to do some kind of statistical validation of that 3. I have to show statistically why the 3 can stand as acceptable in a qualitative case study. That's what positivism is all about. If you are familiar with positivism, you know that positivism talks about positivism is all about objectivism, and that's the reason why it's more aligned to quantitative research. So like I would say, I don't know if I'm answering your question. It's possible for you to do quantitative case study and do and use the positivism philosophy, but then you have to choose another way of validating your sample, you're validating your data and validating your research processes. What I presented here is actually based on qualitative case studies that are based on either interpretivism or realism or pragmatism. So I hope I answered your question. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Otulu. Another person asked a question that what's the difference between a participant and a respondent? And at what condition do you use a participant, the word participant and respondent?
Yeah, thank you for the question. You know, I think in the scientific world, let's focus on ourselves in the Nigerian context. You know, people carelessly use the word participants and respondents interchangeably. You know, when you use participant is actually a kind of research where the researcher and those he's studying are participating in the process in the processes required to complete the scientific inquiry that you are conducting. You are participant. For instance, when you do participatory observation, you know, participatory observation, you're participating in the everyday life of the people that you are studying. You generate the data together. You are in the process of conducting the scientific research together. But for the respondents, which is actually more applicable to positivism and quantitative research, the person is responding to questions in a way objectively without being part of the process of the research. The person is responding to your question. Practically, your questionnaire drop the questionnaire with you, and that's all. In the participation, for participatory observation and in-depth interview, you go back and forth to the person you interviewed, trying to clarify some meanings, you know, trying to clarify meanings, trying to clarify things that you were not clear to you, haven't listened to your interview and transcribed. So we call them participants because they are really part of the scientific process leading to the completion of the study. I hope that
Thank you very much.
Good enough. Yeah.
A very soft landing response. Dr. Olaide Edet, you have the floor. Please ask your question.
Hey, thank you very much, Dr. Atulu, for that presentation. Please, I just want you to use your study to elaborate more on how you ensure the trustworthiness and rigor in your study. For instance, we hear words like dependability, credibility, confirmability, transferability. Those words, how did you apply them in your study? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very, very much. Thank you so very much, Dr. Olaide. Now, you know, in the course of my study, I can't move my slide anymore. But then in the course of my study, I talked about validity of research, and I talked about reliability of research. Like validity had to do with research rigor, and reliability here. So like when we talk about dependability, credibility, and all this stuff, I explain them in sample validity, data validity, and research process validity. When you are doing quantitative research, they have statistical matrices you use. But in quantitative research, which is most likely going to be either ethnography or quantitative case study, what I did is like, first and foremost, to what extent are the people that I sampled are connected to my subject of adoption of institutional repository? You will agree with me that lecturers, librarians, IT workers in the university, administrators, and what have you, are all connected in a way to institutional repository. You know, it's not just the librarian, it's not just the lecturers, the IT, they are the one running the technology, the technical backup for institutional repository. They also are connected. There's the student, the admin officers too. Admin staff too, they are students too. Some of them are students too. Some of them, most of them also participate in meetings where you seek approval for funding for institutional repository. So that sample validity, I sampled all of them because they are connected to it. What about data validity? My data, the validity of my data is based on the fact that I collected data from all these people, all these participants, these stakeholders, this group of participants, and related the data together by forming teams. So all the time, when I have a theme, I will now say, according to one of the participants who is an academic staff, who is this? You know, I can relate everything to the person that provided the data. That's data validity. And of course, the processes I followed, for instance, going through convenient sampling, going through purposive sampling, and the snowballing. How did I get to interview this person? I interviewed this person because when I was interviewing this person, he mentioned the office of this person. So the process that I followed provided the credibility, provided the validity, provided the reliability, the explanation. So that's why it's qualitative research. It's so enormous what we do. So it's so enormous what we do to justify what our claims, scientific claims are. So I hope I was able to convince you, to educate you on the questions that you have raised.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Another person here, the person of Awal Al-Hassan Tata, he wants to ask a question. Please, Dr. Awal.
Good evening, everyone. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you very
much. Go ahead,
we
can hear you.
We can hear you. Professor Otulu never ceases to amaze us anytime he does his presentation. Wonderful. Thank you very much for a very good presentation. Mine has to do with ethics. You mentioned earlier on that the need is, as part of ethics, the respondents or the people in your research need to know that you are researching them, meaning that you are taking data from them to be able to meet up the ethical part of your own research. Now, what happens in a situation where you happen to lay your hands on data that was gathered earlier on, even before the research was taken, and you really want to actually use that in a research? Is there any way that you can actually redeem that to become ethical?
Yeah, it depends on I will repeat again to say that, when anything qualitative research is very enormous. It's complex and enormous. Even when you are dealing with journals, they give you more challenges than they will give you if you are doing quantitative research. So, but the data you're talking about, if you have collected the data before your formal study, the question will be, what are the ethical requirements that were met when you were collecting the study? Sometimes ethical requirements are not documented, but it's important that one should document the ethical requirement. For instance, making your research participant to sign that they agree to some stuff that you wanted to, that you need to do in the course of your study. But the question is, your study you're talking about, to what extent did you meet required ethical clearances from your participants? It's very important for you. It's really important for you to answer that question. Like, there is no rule of the thumb to some of these things. It depends on the social context, your agreement, your relationship with the people you study. So if you think you have to go back to them to actually say, I collected these, will you permit me to use it? And that could, save you from embarrassment, legal issues in the future. If they get to know that you used their data and you didn't take permission from them, you could go back to them, and that's allowed. If you have transcribed the data, you could go back to them, give them the transcribed data to say, this is the data I collected from you. If it's still in recording form, you could go back to them, play it with them, and let them give some kind of recorded agreement or some kind of recorded agreement in forms of audio recording or some kind of document that is signed. I hope I was able to answer your question in a way that is clear. No? Yeah.
Okay. The question here. He said, kindly explain. From Kunle Ayanwale, he noted that you should kindly explain the procedure for conducting action research in the context of qualitative design. Action research.
Okay, in the context of qualitative research. Now, it's interesting that action research is the number of people, the number of action research that are published on the social sciences is lower than the
Dr. Tulu, I think there is a network itch here. Dr. Razak Adisa, are you in the house, please, sir? Dr. Razak Adisa?
Yes,
Yes, maybe you should help us fix that.
What is that?
Someone is actually asking a question based on the procedure for conducting action research in the context of qualitative design.
Okay. Yes, I first of all will have to appreciate Dr. Tulu for that brilliant and very deep presentation on qualitative research. He has really taken us to the depth of what qualitative is all about. And I believe that based on today's presentation, we are getting more knowledge, more awareness, and knowing the strategies to carry out qualitative research. Just as he mentioned, a lot of people would not always want to go into qualitative research, believing that it is limited in terms of reliability, in terms of validity. But now there are so many strategies that can be used to ensure reliability and validity of qualitative. Some of them he has mentioned, some of them we have discussed in the past. So just as quantitative is recognized, qualitative is recognized too. Somebody asked about rigorous, is qualitative rigorous or not? Yes, any research that follows certain steps, defining the questionnaire, conducting literature review, using appropriate instruments and method, and mentioning all this process, it has already made it rigorous. And by that, such research is recognized scientific, empirical, and rigorous. Now to the question on action research. Action research is a kind of research that involves a collaborative approach to problem solving. So action research can be linked to both qualitative and quantitative. So action research is very important in the sense that it involves identifying a problem or issue to be addressed. It involves developing a plan to address the problem through a particular implementation strategy. So by action research, it simply refers to a kind of research that can be applied to a wide range of problem with its own characteristics. So it involves, basically, action research involves collaboration between researchers and practitioners with a focus on improving practice and generating practical solutions to real-world problem. So that is basically what action research is all about. A kind of research that is collaborating with practitioner with a focus on improving practice of doing something. That's why they call it action research. And it's also involved generating practical solution to a real world problem. We know that most of other research design are theoretical, though some of them will end up generating theory if it is qualitative and confirming theory if it is quantitative. But as related to action research, the focus is to come up with a practical solution to a real world problem. That is my own take regarding action research. And
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Sorry, it's as if I'm back.
Dr. Otulu is back online. We really appreciate it.
I appreciate
Dr. Utulu, Dr. Adisa
Yes,
has been
sir.
able to bail you out in your on your absence.
Okay,
So,
I really appreciate that.
okay, but there is a person in the house, the person of Sulaiman Kabir. He has been raising his hands for so long as well. Okay, I think he's back online now. So Sulaiman Kabir, you can raise your question now before we go on.
Thank you, Doctor, sir. I hope I'm in.
Yeah, you are
in. We can hear you.
Okay, sorry for taking you back, sir. I want to ask that is the participant, is he applied to qualitative research and respondent applied to quantitative? I want you to clear us on that, sir.
There are no rules of the thumb here about whether you should call somebody participant or respondent. But I know that if you are doing qualitative research, it's better you call them participant because of the nature of qualitative research, particularly when you are doing a qualitative research that is, that takes into consideration or adopts participatory observation. And if you look at the research processes as I've outlined in the ways I've done so far, you realize that the research subjects, let's say the research subjects here, the people you are studying, they participate more in the process of the research than when you are doing quantitative research, where you just give them questionnaire and come back again to collect the questionnaire. Or somebody helps you give them, you feel they give it back to you. But for qualitative research, we call them participants because they actually participate more. And that's why we said the qualitative research is mainly usually subjective. That's a subjectivity in it. I hope I've answered that. But don't be afraid of saying participants or respondents.
Thank you
Doctor,
very much.
Can I chip in something too?
Okay. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Doctor. Yes, I can see that people are asking about this issue of participant and respondent. And just as Doctor said, there is no rule saying that this is what you must use, but there are standards when it comes to different areas of research. As he said, participant is peculiar to qualitative. And what makes it peculiar to qualitative is because of the involvement of both the interviewee and the interviewer. In a focus group, for instance, where you have a group of people gathered together to answer questions, all of them in that group are participants. So that's why participants are usually used when it comes to analyzing qualitative research. Another is equally commonly used in qualitative, but participant is better used when it has to do with the involvement of the people, particularly in focus group. While respondent, as he said, is peculiar to quantitative. And if you use it interchangeably, nobody may complain, but some examiner will insist that you have to follow the standard. So I think that's just about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Ramide, Before we go to the final notes, I quickly want Dr. Ramide to reflect on what our presenters has presented. So Dr. Ramide, are you in the house? Dr. Ramide? Dr. Ramide? Dr. Ramide from University of Ibadan. Are you there?
Hello.
Yeah, we are there.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, let me use this opportunity to appreciate the people behind this group. It's
one of them.
Hello.
I said you're one of them.
Okay, so I want to appreciate the group. I mean, the people behind the group, and then for this wonderful job that they are doing. Over the years, I've been thinking about this issue of qualitative research, because that is the way the world is going now. And but unfortunately, maybe in most of our institutions, I know that in UI up to today, in some faculties, like my faculties, I mean, I don't know when qualitative research will be allowed. But I've just made it a point of something that I'm going to do with one of my postgraduate students this year, to test run it. And so when we want to defend it, let somebody come and say it's not valid or something. But I'm going to start with one of my master students, so that I won't test it with PhD students, so that but I'll do that. You see, the presentation of Dr. Otulu has really opened our eyes today. He has taught on so many things, which I think will open up some other things for us to go and learn. And I want to appreciate Dr. Otulu for that. And like I said, this is the way for us to go. The era of administering 1,000 questionnaire, 2,000 questionnaire, 2005 questionnaire has gone. There's nothing meaningful that you can get from it. I still argue it with somebody maybe last week, that if you know what it takes to manage maybe 300 questionnaire, you won't ask somebody to go and be administering 1,800 questionnaire. That's why most of our researches are not valid. And then immediately when I look at, it's just for me to look at when somebody brings his work, it's just for me to look at the mean and standard deviation, and I will know that this person doctored the result. But what can you do? You can't do anything. Somebody that has come back from the field. But you can achieve more when we go into the realm of qualitative and let people understand the nitty-gritty, even if it's going to be content analysis alone. And then let us have the what we want to do, and let's see that we are moving forward. And issue of inductive reasoning, deductive reasons, these are critical points that we should also be able to actually focus on. Well, I've learned a great deal today, and once again I want to appreciate Dr. Otulu for this. I hope that he's going to share his slides with us so that we can go and study furthermore. And I want to appreciate Dr. Razak too. He has also been able to give us some insight into the issue of qualitative research. For this group, there is never a dull moment. I've been learning a great deal. So because I'm not a qualitative person. They've tailored us to be quantitative. So we are just gradually disentangling ourselves from quantitative. And I hope that we are going to get there one of these days. Thank you very much.
Dr. Ramide. So before we go to the vote of thanks, which will be done by Professor Ruth, I would like to quickly give the citation on Dr. Otulu once again. Dr. Otulu.
Sorry, sir. There's somebody raising up his hand. Can we have him? Sorry, sir.
Okay. Do we have someone raising? Okay, that's true. Pastor Tommy. Yeah, Pastor Tony. Are you there?
Oh, yes, I'm here very much.
All right, we are listening.
Yeah. Thank you. Just to say that Samuel Utulu and everyone that has participated in putting this together. Briefly, I just wanted to say that concerning who asked the question about using of term, now it's easier to use any of those terms, like the presenter had actually explained. When you are participating, you can say you are dealing with participants. But what I want to say is that people should know that your work is going to be read by different type of people, and do all you can to reduce the amount of queries that will be generated while they are reading. So, and that's why sometimes they have the part of a research that says definition of terms. So if you're able to define your term, it will help. And maybe sometimes you can have that into your limitation to let people know that I'm making use of this term for this purpose and for this reason. So that will really douse the tension that will be coming from reviewers, especially when it comes to people reading your work. So generally, like the presenter said, it can be used interchangeably, and that is fine. But just let's make sure that we make use of terms appropriately to reduce the amount of queries that will come when the reviewers are looking through our work. So that's my little contribution to this time. I'm sorry I came in late. The time difference from where I stay and where you guys are. So I came in a little late, but I enjoyed the little part of the presentation. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Dr. Tool, do you have anything to say in regards to that?
Yeah, like that's my immediate elder brother.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So, again, I want to thank him for tuning in. He's my immediate elder brother. Then again, I want to thank Aramide. He's the newest professor in town now. So I thank him. And that's all. I just told that minute. Thank you, sir.
All right. Now, I'll quickly like to give a citation on Dr. Otulu. Information Technology and Computing, American University of Nigeria, ULAN. He bagged the Bachelor in Library and Information Science degree from the Department of Library, Archives and Information Studies, University of Ibadan, and Master's degree in Information Science from the African Regional Center for Information Science, University of Ibadan. Dr. Otulu bagged his doctoral degree in Information Systems from Department of Information Systems, Faculty of Commerce, University of Cape Town, South Africa. He started his academic career as an academic librarian in 2005 as a librarian too, and left in 2017 as acting deputy university librarian when he took a full lecturing job at Adeleke University, Ede, Nigeria. Utulu was appointed an assistant professor at the American University of Nigeria in the year 2020, and has about 40 publications in journal conference proceedings and chapters in books of readings. He won the University of Cape Town 2014 Research Associate Award as PhD student. He's also a co-author of the paper. He's also a co-author of a paper. Sorry, that skips that. He won the University of Cape Town 2014 Research Associate Award as PhD student. He also a co-author of a paper that won the Neil Doherty Best Paper Prize Award during 2022 United Kingdom Academy for Information Systems Conference. He has served as a resource person in several local and international workshops and as a speaker in public lectures in some Nigerian universities, including University of Ibadan, College of Medicine, University of Lagos, Idi-Araba, Lagos, Lagos State University, Ojo, and Redeemers University, Ede. Dr. Otulu is a husband to one wife and father to two sons. He is a die-hard Super Eagle and a Chelsea fan. Thank you very much once again. Professor Ruth, can you please give us a vote of thanks?
Uh, Thank you very much. I came in a little bit late due to network problem, but I really enjoyed the parts that I met. So first of all, I want to, on behalf of the association, want to thank, is it Dr. or Professor Tulu? I don't know.
By God's grace,
But I
Professor.
want to thank him very much. Okay, Professor Tulu, thank you very much for the lecture, and thank you for taking us through this. I'm sure that
We are with you. I think she's gone. So once again, we would like to say thank you for everyone that participated. Dr. Otulu, we appreciate you. Dr. Ramide and every other members of the association.
okay,
Thank
I'm
you.
back.
Okay.
I'm back. I just wanted to say that, for listening to the citation of Dr. Otulu, as in science, you may want to believe that science discipline always applied quantitative research. So I'm so thrilled the by the research method used for his dissertation, because most of the time we rely on quantitative research for science area as such that he went through. But it's so thrilling that he made use of the qualitative research. I wish I would be able to do that one of these days. And I also want to thank every participant today, because it's one thing to organize a webinar like this, it's another thing to get people to attend. And when I see the attendance today, it's so encouraging. I want to thank everyone for participating in today's seminar. God bless you. And I want to thank all my team members for putting up this seminar and for organizing it, and also for making it possible for us to have this seminar today. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much, Professor Ruth. So,
thank you,
Dr.
the slides and the video recording. Question have been asked on that.
What did you say, sir?
Some want to know, are you going to make the slide available as well as the Zoom recording?
Yes, we'll contact Dr. Tula as soon as possible to get the slide so that we can share it to the platform. We can share it on our platform, on our WhatsApp platform. And the record as well, the link is going to be posted on our WhatsApp platform for people to have access to it as well. So, and our attendance, we urge every member that have participated today to access our attendance on the Zoom chat platform. So I think I've just posted it there now. You can fill in the attendance and for record purpose. Thank you very much, Dr. Adisa. Do have a wonderful time.
Please, before you go, I think I saw a question here, which I don't know whether it has been answered. How do I know when to use mixed method, or where is the question again?
Yes, yes, something like that.
I believe
yes.
Should they should come to the WhatsApp
How do
platform.
I know when to apply mixed method research?
So that others on the platform may learn. So that question is going to be posted on the WhatsApp platform. Okay, ma'am. Thank you very much. Do have a wonderful time. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you, sir.
So we're still waiting for people to access the attendance before we go offline. Professor Ruth, I thought you want to share us with cakes and wines and minerals, soft drinks and all. There is nothing
Okay,
presented.
I will send it. I will send it on the WhatsApp.
You should share us with freebies and so many things now, so that we can enjoy this workshop now.
Okay, you get that on the WhatsApp.
On the
Thank
WhatsApp.
you.
Don't worry. So can you please help us share that question you just presented on our WhatsApp platform? Maybe
Okay.
we might have some of our resource person to respond to that.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. So we're about to go offline now. I hope everyone have had access to the attendance